Let me tell you something most spiritual leaders won't dare say out loud. Some of us weren't born to walk in the light, at least not in the way people expect. Some of us were born with a shadow so deep, so ancient, so magnetic, that it terrified even us. And yet, that darkness wasn't a curse. It was a compass. A warning, yes, but also a whisper. A whisper from God saying, you were chosen for something different. Not because we were perfect, but because we could see what others refused to see. We could feel what others numbed. We could hold what others ran from. The darkness didn't come to destroy us. It came to awaken us. But here's the truth: God did try to warn you. Not in thunder or lightning, but in silence, in patterns, in pain, in the people who betrayed you, in the dreams that wouldn't let you sleep, in the eerie coincidences that followed you like shadows. These weren't setbacks. They were signs, warnings. And if you're watching this, it means you felt them too. You've lived through the unexplainable. You've questioned your sanity. You've sensed that something about your life has always been different. And I'm here to tell you, you're not crazy. You're not cursed. You're marked. The first sign God tried to warn you about was isolation. Not just being alone, but being disconnected. Even in a crowded room, you felt unseen, misunderstood, like an alien in human clothing. You tried to fit in, but something in you just wouldn't let you. You could play the role for a while, but eventually the mask would crack. People would say you were too intense, too deep, too much. But that isolation wasn't punishment, it was protection. God was pulling you away from the noise so you could hear what others couldn't. So you could remember who you really are without the contamination of other people's expectations. But did you listen? Or did you keep trying to belong to a world you were never meant to fit into? The second sign was chaos. Not the kind you create, but the kind that finds you. Relationships that fall apart for no reason. Sudden losses, betrayals, near-death experiences that seem to come out of nowhere. It's like your life has always been a little off-script. But what if I told you that chaos was God's way of breaking the illusion? What if every collapse was a coded message saying, this is not your path? What if the pain was not punishment but redirection? The divine doesn't always speak in comfort. Sometimes it speaks in earthquakes. And for people like us, the dark chosen ones, it has to. Because otherwise, we won't stop. We'll keep chasing dreams that don't belong to us. We'll keep betraying our calling just to feel normal. So God sends chaos to cut the cord. The third sign was attraction to darkness. You've always been drawn to the edge, to the strange, the forbidden, the mystical, not in a destructive way, but in a curious way. You saw beauty in the broken. You felt safe in the shadow. You weren't afraid of demons, you wanted to understand them. While others ran from the dark, you walked into it. But this wasn't rebellion. This was your soul remembering that light isn't the only teacher, that there's wisdom in the void, that God lives in the shadow just as much as the sun. But did you trust that pull? Or did you shame yourself for it? Did you try to be pure in ways that weren't real, just to be accepted? The fourth sign was your sensitivity. Not just emotionally, but energetically. You've always felt things before they happened. You could sense lies in people's voices. You could walk into a room and feel what happened there hours before. You were called too sensitive, but that sensitivity was sacred. It was your radar, your protection, your superpower. God gave it to you so you'd know when something was off, so you wouldn't be fooled by appearances. But the world doesn't value that kind of seeing, so you learned to numb it, to doubt it, to shut it down. And in doing so, you lost your compass. But the signs never stopped. They just got louder. The fifth sign was your dreams, the ones that haunted you, the ones so vivid they felt more real than waking life. You've had visions of places you've never been, of people you've never met, of disasters that happened days later. But these weren't just dreams. They were downloads, warnings, prophecies. God speaks to the chosen in symbols, in riddles, in archetypes. Because if he spoke clearly, it would terrify the part of you still attached to logic. So he sends messages in sleep when your mind is quiet enough to receive. But Did you pay attention? Or did you write them off as imagination? The sixth sign was betrayal, not just once. Repeatedly. You've been used, lied to, abandoned by people you trusted. And each time, it cut deeper. But what if betrayal was part of your refinement? What if it was God's way of purging your circle, of showing you who could not go with you into your next level? You see, chosen ones, especially dark ones, are often surrounded by people who sense their power but fear it. They don't consciously know why they envy you, why they try to dim you, but they do. And so they betray you, not because of who you are, but because of what you carry. You are a threat to every false identity around you, and God lets them fall away so your real tribe can find you. The seventh and final sign is the persistent call, that tug in your soul, that quiet voice that says, there's more. Even when your life looks fine on the outside, something inside you aches. You've tried to silence it with jobs, relationships, distractions, but it keeps coming back. That's not anxiety. That's your assignment. That's God refusing to let you forget. You are not here to live a normal life. You are not here to play small. You are not here to be liked. You are here to disrupt, to awaken, to expose. The world is under a spell and your presence is the antidote. But will you answer the call? Will you embrace the path, even if it makes no sense? Even if it costs you everything? So I ask you now, what if everything that went wrong was never wrong at all? What if the pain was permission? What if the darkness was the door?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
You didn't stumble into this life. You signed a contract, not the kind written in ink, but in soul, in fire, in blood, in eternity. Before you were born, you knew what this would cost. You saw the pain, the confusion, the isolation, the betrayals. You saw the weight, the darkness, the nights where you'd scream at the sky asking why. And still you said yes, because something in you understood that the deeper the shadow, the greater the light it could reveal. You weren't chosen just because you were strong. You were chosen because you were willing. Willing to walk through fire without losing your voice. Willing to descend into chaos and still remember your name. Willing to walk into a broken world and carry the frequency of something uncorrupted. See, we don't talk enough about the warriors who were sent into the shadow not to be consumed by it, but to reclaim something lost inside it. We love the idea of the angel in white light, floating above the world in peace. But what about the angel with ash on their wings? The one who dove into the mud, the trauma, the bloodline curses, the ancestral wounds, and said, I'll take this on. I'll clean it from the inside. That's who the dark chosen ones are. We are not here to escape darkness. We are here to transform it, to walk into the storm and bring stillness, to look into the eyes of demons our own and others and say, you don't win here. But this mission comes at a cost, and God knew that. That's why He sent warnings. That's why He sent signs, because the path of the dark chosen one isn't just hard, it's unforgiving. You are not allowed to stay asleep. You are not allowed to settle for mediocrity. You are not allowed to lie to yourself for too long, because the moment you do, the universe will shake the ground beneath you. Why? Because your energy is too important. Your voice carries frequencies that disrupt illusions. Your presence alone destabilizes systems built on lies. You don't even have to speak, just your being exposes what's false. And that's why darkness follows you. Not because you are cursed, but because you are called. You have probably noticed this, that your life has never allowed comfort for too long. That every time you think you've made it, something collapses. That every time you try to be like everyone else, something inside you dies. That's not failure. That's the contract. That's the sacred reminder that you were not born for average. You were born to disrupt, to challenge, to rebuild. But first, you had to be broken. Not because God enjoys your suffering, but because only the broken are humble enough to hold the kind of power you're meant to carry. Only the broken can carry the medicine. because only the broken understand the wound. And here's the thing most people never realize. Your mission didn't start when you awakened. It started the moment you were born into dysfunction, into trauma, into a bloodline that carried secrets and shame. God placed you there on purpose, not to punish you, but to plant you. You were the seed, the interruption in the pattern, the breaker of chains. And so your early life was the training ground. Every slap, every scream, every silence, it was molding you, teaching you how to feel everything, sense everything, survive everything. So that when it was time to rise, you wouldn't just speak light, you would embody it. Not the filtered, polished light that sells books, but the raw, gritty, earned light that turns pain into prophecy. And isn't that what you've always felt deep down? That you were never meant to be saved, but to save others. Not through ego, not through superiority, but through embodiment. Because once you've walked through hell and made it out with your soul intact, you become a mirror for others still trapped in it. You don't have to preach. You are the sermon. Your scars become scripture. Your silence becomes sanctuary. People are drawn to you, and they don't know why. They just feel safe, seen, understood. Because you've been to the places they're afraid to admit they've visited. And you didn't run. You remembered. So let me ask you something. What if you stopped fighting the darkness and started listening to it? What if the shadow isn't your enemy but your initiation? What if the very thing you've been avoiding is the key to your next level? What if God didn't give you the hardest mission because He wanted to test you, but because He trusted you? This contract you signed, it's not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about remembering that your pain was never random, that your chaos was never meaningless, that your suffering wasn't in vain. It was all part of the code that activates your purpose, the code that turns you into the kind of leader who doesn't just talk about healing but embodies it, the kind of being who doesn't just quote scriptures but becomes one. So I ask you again, are you ready to stop running from the darkness? Are you ready to honor the contract you made before you were born? If you've made it this far, then you already know you're not ordinary. You've never been. You were never meant to be. And with that truth comes a reality most aren't prepared for. Being chosen doesn't mean being blessed in the ways the world understands. It means being burned. It means being stripped, tested, emptied, and pushed to the edge again and again until all that remains is truth. That's the cost of carrying fire. And fire doesn't care about your comfort. Fire comes to purify. There's a reason people are drawn to you. Even when you try to hide, they come to you. With their pain, their questions, their chaos. They don't even know why they feel safe around you, they just do. And it's not because you have all the answers. It's because you've been through the fire. You've survived things that would have destroyed others. You've walked through storms and come out soaked in wisdom. People feel that in your energy. They feel the depth, the integrity, the silent authority of someone who has earned their light. But no one talks about what it takes to get there. No one talks about the nights you cried out to a silent sky, begging for relief, only to be met with more silence. No one talks about the years you spent doubting your path, questioning your sanity, trying to numb the knowing that wouldn't go away. People see the strength, they admire the light, but they don't understand the cost, the loneliness, the emotional weight, the spiritual exhaustion that comes from holding space for everyone else while trying to keep yourself from falling apart. And yet, you keep showing up. You keep giving. You keep healing. Why? Because something in you knows this is bigger than you. Something in you remembers the contract, even when your ego forgets. Something in you refuses to let the darkness win not just in the world, but in yourself. That's the real battle. Not against demons out there, but the ones that live in your own mind. The voices that say you're not enough, that it's too late, that you're crazy for believing you were sent here for something more. But here's what most people will never understand. The fire doesn't just burn what's false, it awakens what's real. Every breakdown you've had, every loss, every betrayal, it wasn't just pain. It was activation. You were being initiated. refined, shaped into someone who doesn't just talk about transformation but embodies it. That's why you feel things so deeply, why you can't ignore the suffering around you, why you feel compelled to speak, to create, to heal, even when no one asks you to. Because your soul remembers the assignment, and the fire inside you won't let you forget. But here's the paradox. The more fire you carry, the more you'll be misunderstood. People will project onto you. They'll fear your depth. They'll try to contain your energy, water it down, box it in. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence exposes what they've buried. Your light triggers their shadows. Your truth disrupts their comfort. And still you're called to love them anyway. To hold space, even when you're not held. To forgive, even when you're not understood. Because that's what fire does, it illuminates, even when it's alone. So what do we do with this fire? We wield it. We stop apologizing for it. We stop trying to make it smaller for the sake of others' comfort. We start honoring it as sacred. We start trusting that the fire knows where it needs to go. That if it's burning away relationships, jobs, identities, it's not cruelty. It's clarity. The fire is not here to destroy your life. It's here to destroy the illusion of who you think you need to be. So you can finally become who you were designed to be. And that version of you, the one on the other side of the fire, is unstoppable. Not because you're invincible, but because you're authentic. Because you've already faced the worst and survived. Because you've mastered the art of alchemy, turning pain into purpose, trauma into teaching, wounds into wisdom. That's your gift, not perfection, but transmutation. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you dangerous to the systems of illusion. Because you don't just carry fire, you are fire. So let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you stopped running from your own intensity? What would change if you trusted that your emotions, your depth, your passion weren't liabilities, but weapons of light? What if the very parts of you you've been told are too much are the exact tools God gave you to shift the world around you? You don't need to be more humble. You need to be more honest. Honest about your power. Honest about your pain. Honest about your purpose. Because the world doesn't need more people playing it safe. It needs people who are on fire with truth. And that's you. This is the part no one saw coming. The twist in the story that flips everything upside down. You thought your darkness was your flaw. You thought it was the thing that needed to be healed, hidden, managed, or transcended. You thought you were broken. But what if I told you this? Your darkness was never the problem. It was the answer, the secret code, the final sign, the key to humanity's awakening. We were taught to fear the dark, to avoid it, to label it as evil. But the truth is, only those who have walked through it fully can carry the medicine that heals it. You didn't go through what you went through just for you. Your pain wasn't just personal, it was collective. You were chosen to carry a piece of humanity's unprocessed shadow within you. That grief, that rage, that shame, it wasn't just yours, it was ours. And you held it, you felt it, you wept it, you screamed it, you transmuted it. And every time you did, you were doing the work of 1,000 ancestors. You were clearing timelines. You were unlocking codes. You were weaving light where there was none before. That's why your life couldn't be easy. That's why you couldn't just be normal. Because your soul was busy doing cosmic surgery on this entire planet. And the incredible part, you didn't even know it. You thought you were failing. You thought you were lost. But you were in the deepest initiation of all, becoming the vessel. Becoming the living, breathing, walking bridge between shadow and light. And now you're starting to see, aren't you? The way people come to you with their stories. The way they open up, cry, confess, soften. Not because you fixed them, but because your presence gives them permission to feel what they've been hiding their whole life. That's your real power. Not in what you say, but in what you allow. You are a sacred mirror. You reflect to others the parts of themselves they've buried. And yes, that makes you magnetic, but it also makes you dangerous to the illusions, to the lies, to the systems that feed on fear, because you can't be manipulated by fear when you've already sat with it. You can't be controlled by shame when you've already faced it. You can't be silenced by society when your voice rises from the bones of your own resurrection. You are no longer just surviving, you are embodied truth. And that truth is contagious. That's why you're here. Not to preach, but to radiate. Not to prove, but to be. Your very existence is living proof that darkness can be alchemized. That trauma can be transformed. That suffering can become sacred. You are the future ancient, the soul who remembered, the echo of a prophecy written before time began. And now is the time to rise. You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet knowing. That strange sense that something big is coming. Not outside, inside. A tipping point. A moment where everything finally clicks. Where you don't just understand your pain, you own it. Where you don't just carry your darkness, you wield it. As a tool. As a torch. As a transmission. Because that's what you've become. A living broadcast of hope for those still trapped in their own shadow. So I'll leave you with this. What if the final war isn't between good and evil, but between those who remember who they are, and those still trying to forget? What if your job isn't to fight the darkness, but to illuminate it from the inside out? What if you're not waiting for a sign from God, but you are the sign? Because the moment you stop apologizing for your darkness, the world starts to awaken to its light. And that changes everything.